Hello and welcome to this day's webinar about security culture and cybersecurity awareness. With me today, I got Roer, Chief Research Officer of KnowBe4, and Marte Medby. She's a GRC consultant in Watchcom. Would you like to introduce yourselves also, maybe? Kai, would you like to go first?
Sure, I can do that. Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here. Kai Roer, Chief Research Officer of KnowBe4. My job is not only being here and sharing our results, I also manage a small team of researchers. And our main mission is to understand the correlations between awareness, behaviors, and culture. And I will be talking about that today.
Yeah. And if anyone's got any questions for Kai, of course, feel free to use the chat. You can ask him anything, and we'll try to force him to answer. And Marta, would you like to tell a bit about yourself as well?
Yes, thank you. I'm Marte. I work for Watchcom and with KnowBe4. I help organizations set up and perform security culture programs and try and help cultivate a good culture in the organizations. And yeah, I've been working here for almost 2 years now, and most of the time I've been with security culture. So
yeah,
I'm excited for today. Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you both for being here, of course. And of course, same goes for Marta. If you have any questions for her, feel free to type them in the chat, and we'll try our best to force her to answer. We apparently have a lot of noise in the background. We'll see if we can do something to deal with that. But can you hear us well, Otto? Yeah, hopefully everyone can. Yeah, perfect. I would also like to direct everyone's attention to use the polls. We will have some questions during the talk. And if you check out the poll, Tormod has already posted the first question. So feel free to go in and click on that. Anyway, before we get going, would one of you like to start talking maybe about how did you get into security culture in the first place? Like, what brought you to security culture and not like penetration testing and the technical aspects of security? What kind of made you take the leap to start working with the people?
Is that for me or for Marte?
You're muted.
Yeah, whichever one wants to go first, I guess.
Then ladies first.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, well, it's a good question. I was actually studying sort of the law and IT technology, a lot of privacy, and so I got to know Watchcom through a friend and went to Paranoia and got super interested in security. And when I started in Watchcom, we just started using KnowBe4, I think. So I was put to the task to try and figure out how we would use it and how we would help with security culture. We have already had a long experience with security awareness and security culture, but so I was put on the KnowBe4 track, and yeah, this is where I am today. So it's and enjoying every minute. I think it's really exciting. I think it's fun to discuss and see organizations grow. So yeah, I think it's the right choice.
Perfect. And could you tell us a bit about that journey, starting to working with KnowBe4 and security culture, and a little bit maybe what you learned since you started working with it?
Yeah, well, I've learned a lot. I didn't know much about security culture before I started, so it's been a very steep learning curve. And as one of the people from the start working with Novacore in Watchcom, there have been some back and forth, and we've had to adjust and try to just find a good path to be able to incorporate our methods and using Novacore, and it's been a great success so far. So I think that's very good, and we used a lot of different tools before while trying to do security culture. So now we can sort of have everything all at once in the platform, which makes life much easier for us.
Yeah, it sounds really good. And of course, when talking about security culture, one of the big questions that comes up is kind of what is security culture, and I believe you have found kind of an answer to that, Kai. If you would like to share that with us.
Yes. First, let me apologize if there are any kind of audio issues here. Now I'm using a different microphone. Hopefully that is helping. Let me know using the chat. If not, please bear with me. I will have to fix this next time. So, security culture, what is it? Well, it is a lot of different things. To me, it is all the practice, all the ideas, all the knowledge of the employees that influence the security of their employer. So the challenge with security culture is that all of us kind of agree that it's there. Although some believe that they don't actually have a security culture. That's a different discussion. Let's go there later. But the challenge is that we agree that we have it, but it's very difficult to actually point to what it is exactly, and touch it and feel it, and that creates a lot of confusion and misunderstandings, I believe.
Yeah, and you had quite a journey working with security culture. When you first started, it wasn't really a word, and if you mentioned it, people would kind of maybe laugh and say, yeah, that's not important. But of course now everybody can see it's important, and one of the things that you've been working with is trying to figure out how we can measure the security culture and try to find benchmark numbers so we can work methodically with it. And but how do you measure security culture?
There are many different ways of measuring culture in general, and there's also security culture. And the purpose of why you measure should be be where you start. So why do you want to measure it? Is it just to know that you have something? Well, then maybe observations could be enough. If it is to be able to compare how you do your security culture compared to other companies, or also how you evolve or change the culture over time, then I recommend a more scientific approach to measuring culture. And the challenge then is that science on the cultural aspect is also a bit, they have disagreements, which means that security culture becomes complex very quickly. But one way to do it is use the tool that KnowBe4 has. This was created by me and my team in Norway, actually, some years ago, and then later sold to KnowBe4. And this platform or tool uses 7 different dimensions to measure culture. Why 7 different dimensions? Well, because culture is complex, and understanding it and measuring it means that you need to take into considerations everything from attitudes, for example, compliance, communication, cognition, for example. So what do people know and how do they use it? What do people care about norms? Do they follow them? What are the norms? Those kind of things. So if you are interested in measuring culture in order to actually give meaningful results and say something about how it changes over time, then use a professionally designed and preferably scientifically sound measurement instrument like the Security Culture Survey.
Okay, and after we've done this survey and we kind of we have the measurements, we know where we are, and we know whether or not we're good or bad or maybe just in between. Marte, you work with this quite a lot on a daily basis with our customers. So how can we use these measurements when working with security culture and trying to improve the overall culture in the organization?
Well, like Kai said, we get a lot of information from actually doing these surveys, and we find out a lot. We find out what areas we need to focus on when moving forward with the program. And we also get a sense of the people's attitude towards security, because that's a very important aspect of security culture, is changing someone's attitude and someone's perspective on security. Which we then try to do by making tailored training exercises for the organization based on the results from the survey that we performed. So if the survey shows a lack of understanding of maybe passwords, then we will try and focus on passwords, which is something that's been very effective, and we see that the people also respond very well to it, and then we can try and improve, and then we do another check, and then we improve further.
Okay, and you mentioned attitude a couple of times there, and of course that's quite important. What attitude people have towards security and culture in general, and of course what kind of attitude you have towards learning new things and gathering new information. And this question is kind of for both of you. So first one to grab the mic, I guess. What kind of attitudes do you usually see when conducting surveys, preferably maybe in the Nordic countries? What kind of attitudes do you see in people?
So what I can answer in that one is actually based on the completion rates we see. And what I will say there is that it varies a lot, depending not only on where in the world you are, which is a strong influencer, but also what kind of company you have and the current attitudes towards security in general amongst your employees. So that's what we see on a global scale. And what do I mean by completion rates? Well, it varies. Some organizations see in like single digit figures when it comes to completion rates. And let's say that you have 5,000 employees and only 50 of them actually complete the survey. That actually can be interpreted as an attitude towards security. So worth looking at. On the other end of the scope, we have similar sized organizations with completion rates above the 80s, which is quite good. But those are not so many of those, and it is, again, we believe, a strong indicator of the attitudes towards security. Maybe Marte have some more details on the Nordic market.
Yeah, well, what we see when we do these security culture programs, we do see that the attitude is a lot of how people see security. It's about how employees are maybe seeing this security culture training as sort of hindering, so they either won't do it or they will just skip through it, and that says a lot, like Kai said, about the attitude of the organization. And we also see a lot of examples of where management is maybe not quite as involved in the security culture planning and performance, which also has a huge impact on the results that we see of attitude.
Okay, and that's a quite interesting point actually, and try to get the management involved. And I think we're going to get back to that. First, I have a question about because Kai, you talked about different kind of aspects, and someone score high and someone score low, of course. And for those of you who are not familiar with Kai, he often talks about bad security culture versus good security culture. And I was wondering, could you give us some examples on kind of what is good security culture versus bad security culture, and what are kind of the key differentiators between the two of them?
Sure. So first of all, I'd like to point out the fact that security culture as a term and security in general is a very new industry, a very new area, a very new research area, not only in Norway, but around the world. Why do I say that? Simply because we don't have all the answers. Those will come over the next few decades. In decades, meaning it will take a while to actually get through all the data, and connect all the dots and make sense out of it. But what we do know today is that bad security culture, for example, shows poor attitudes towards security. So typically, employees don't care. They don't complete the trainings, or if they get something that are mandatory, they will complain and, oh no, why? No, not this stuff again. But more importantly, we see this also reflected in behaviors. For example, we did the research some time ago where we looked at people's willingness to share credentials in a phishing email. So basically, employees typing in their credentials in a typical phishing email. And there we saw that if the company had a poor security culture, there was 52 times more likely that their employees would share credentials compared to an organization with a good security culture. Personally, I think this is huge, not only because the numbers are huge and the impact for organizations with poor security culture, but also because this is, to my knowledge, the first study where we draw a direct connection between behaviors on security and security culture. This is possible because we measure security culture using a scientific approach, and it is possible because of the scale of KnowBe4. Due to the large amount of our customers around the world and their number of employees using this platform, we are in a unique position to actually research these topics. We don't need to go and invite people to do research project. We actually have all the data, and that is huge. There will be much more fascinating studies and research coming from KnowBe4 research in the next few years.
Okay, and that's quite exciting actually. And what I'm picking up, both of you are kind of talking a lot about attitudes and the attitudes people have towards security and end users' attitudes towards learning it. Would you say if we engaged the user or created more engagement around security culture, that it'd be possible to change these attitudes?
So from my perspective, the answer is yes. Make security not great again, but make security something that involves people, that engage people, that is relatable for the employees. Move away from strict policies and boring one time per year compliance-based trainings, and make a program that is interesting for the employee. Make it personal, make it relevant to them, not only to yourself. I'm sure Marte has much more tips on in this regard.
Yeah, and I'd like to hear more about how we can create a kind of a continuous program and engaging the users. And I'm going to let you answer soon, Marte. One of the reasons I'm asking is we have a poll in the chat The question is, do you find it hard to create engagement around information security with your end users? If anyone has not answered and want to go ahead and answer that real quick, we could get some more numbers in. If not, right now it's kind of 50-50. Some find it hard, some find it difficult to create engagement. So Marte, could you first tell a little bit more about what do you do today to engage the users?
Yeah, well, so we try a different approach, and it definitely depends a lot on the maturity from the organization that the organization already has. But like Kai says, it's a lot about the engagement and trying to get it personal for the user. And what we aim to do is actually change the perspective that the employees can be assets. They see themselves as assets instead of just trusting that everything is okay and that the spam filters will take out everything. We need to make them see that they are actually a part of the organization's security. So by doing that, we focus a lot on the awareness part, but we also try to make it fun. We use different games and e-learnings, but we also do the tests that we see engage people a lot, because when you click on a phishing email, you definitely remember it for the next time. So that's all the things we do to try and create engagement. And we also, to make it a continuous program, we do ask our organization for feedback, and we do have evaluation meetings with them at the rate that they wish, so that they could come with feedback to us and we can make adjustments if needed, based on the response that they get from their employees.
Okay, and do you have like I believe you brought an example of what a program could look like to kind of help people know how to get going and how to start up, and for the untrained eye, could you tell us like what are we looking at here? Well,
yes, so this is our famous annual information security cycle, which I know it seems like a lot, but this is for a more mature organization. But it does include all the activities that we usually recommend, both phishing and e-learnings regularly through the year. As you see, we also have the proficiency assessment or the security culture survey that we always start off with to sort of find the base for the program, and then we choose the training modules based on results of phishing and the results of the surveys. And then we have these evaluation meetings that I mentioned, just to make sure that everything is on track and that it's still relevant for the organization. And what's great about this is that you could make adjustments as you go along. If you see that you are not able to make one phishing a month, you could do it once every quarter, you could do it once every half year, but we do recommend that we do it regularly.
Okay, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and I'm gonna say everybody's not the same, right?
Right. We do have smaller and larger companies, more complex or very small, and that has a little resources. So what we do is we try and see the needs of the organization when we start up, and we try to see how what effects they will get out of the different activities, because bombarding a small organization with 20 employees with phishing every month will maybe seem a little bit excessive and become redundant and actually decrease the information security culture. So we need to continually assess the organization that we're working with and discuss with them and try and tailor it so that it's relevant.
Okay, and then how do you go about finding like the needs to kind of suit every organization? Is there a magic formula you could share with us, or is it more like science based?
Well, I would say it's more science based, and it's we try approaching it differently based on the information we have about the organization. And like I said, the input from the organization itself is very important to be able to keep it relevant for them. And if they say we need more or less training modules, then we definitely can do that. If they need more variation, we can do that. It's just trying to find the needs that the organization has, and also assessing the level of maturity through continual monitoring of the level of awareness and the behaviors of the organization and the employees.
Okay, and does anybody in the chat have any questions regarding this this training wheel before we we take it off the screen again? Okay, I'm gonna take that as a nope. We have also now gotten our second poll out. If you would like to check that out. Question is: have you been asked by your board or CEO to implement the security awareness program? So just head over to the polls, and I'll check on that in a couple of minutes.
While you're doing that, let me point people to Martin's comment in the chat. He makes it makes security personal, in the sense that he actually puts security not only in the office but also takes it home with you. So what do you do when Auntie receives this strange email and maybe even click on it? Or what about that additional module, or maybe some game card, or you know, these things that kids will want and maybe not think before they actually act on. So Martin, shout out to you. I love that kind of making it personal. And we've had some experience in Norway back a decade ago with great experience, actually. So keep it up. And next time in London, let's have a beer again.
Okay, perfect. And I want to ask you something, Kai, because you mentioned earlier, you talked about a lot about behaviors and culture and awareness, but is there any kind of relationship between awareness, behaviors, and culture? Is there any connection at all, or?
You promised not to break that secret. Yeah, well, so as I kind of hinted that earlier today, my team is looking at correlations between culture, knowledge, or awareness, if you like, and behaviors. Why do we do that? Well, we as an industry, we have this idea that awareness is driving behaviors, and the right kind of behaviors is protecting our organization. And we have that idea. But one of the biggest challenges, in my opinion, with our industry is the fact that we don't really rely on facts. We have a lot of ideas, and then we blurt them out there, and then everybody is like either shooting you down or hailing you and say, yeah, way to go. But no one really asks for the facts. So what we are trying to do now at Nobel for Research is to connect those three dots with facts. We want to know what is the actual impact of awareness trainings. To what extent will training your employees actually drive your employees' behaviors? And of course, how do behaviors and awareness or knowledge, if you like, also influence your culture? And how can you use culture to influence the knowledge, the training, the attitudes, and the behaviors of your employees? What I can tell you is that we are working on it. We are seeing correlations, meaning that we see that there are relations between these three concepts, which is good. I can also share that, if you promise not to share it to anyone else, that these correlations seem to be positive, in the sense that they are what we expect, meaning we are backing all the opinions now with actual facts, and I love that. We will publish this work probably sometime first half next year, and then I will be able to dig more into details.
Okay, and if I can ask you, could you tell us maybe one of the expectations that you're kind of trying to prove with the facts, or is that the hush hush?
So one of the challenges when it comes to awareness in general, and we see this not only in our industry, but we see it in the safety industry. It's been a lot of research in this area trying to document the fact that awareness trainings or awareness campaigns in general actually influence the behavior we want to see. The challenge with that research, or most of it, is that it has not been able, I will repeat that, it has not been able to prove a direct link between awareness training or campaigns and change in behavior. We've seen this in traffic, for example, so car safety, those kind of things, over the past 50 years. So there's a lot of research in this space. But the good news is that we also see that when we add not only the training, but also policies. So, for example, seat belts is an example. By just having the technology, the seatbelt itself, which was invented by Volvo, I think back in the 60s or 50s, no one really used them. I mean, they were there, you could, but no one really did. Then in late 70s and early 80s, policymakers began to make it legal or tell you that you had to wear a seatbelt when driving. I remember this back in Norway, and it was like, yeah, you're legally required to do it, but who cares? No one really is going to do anything. Until a few years later, when the police started to actually follow up on this legislation. And why is this important when it comes to security? Well, number one, you need the technology. So we need the training, we need the security technology, and we need to know how to use it. Number two, it needs to be a requirement, not an option. Because if it is an option, most of us will be lazy like me and not do it. And when you make it a rule, you also need to follow through with incentives, or in this case, then policing that people are actually following the rules. Only then will you see change. But by combining these things, you will see change. And hopefully then you have designed your program to see the kind of change you want to see and not the opposite effect.
Okay, and I think you bring up quite a few interesting points about policies having the rules in place, having incentives to kind of engage and motivate people to actually go ahead and learn it. And I think I speak for everybody that we look forward to seeing your report and seeing you release your numbers. That's gonna be exciting. I think we're gonna learn a lot. I know, Marte, you work a lot with policies and incentives. I'm gonna let you talk about that in a second. I got one more question for you first, Kai. And that is you spoken about culture and how we can use culture to influence security, and you also spoke about that it varies a lot from the countries that the countries we're in. So to what extent is security culture separate or maybe not from the organizations or the national culture?
So I will answer that in a second. First, I will say hello, Thomas. My next location is undisclosed. I will let you know when I'm there, because that's one of the purposes of an RV, or a studio in an RV even. A great question though. Yes, so security and culture, and how does that influence or the differences here? I think that security culture is a part of organizational culture. It is not something different or something new. It is something that we have had with us since day zero when we started, teaming up. And basically, it's that part of organizational culture that focuses on the security of your organization. So that means that it's not separate, it's not something in addition to, it's part of the ongoing cultural work in an organization. It also means that just like organizational culture, it will differ based on what kind of company you are, what kind of industry you are in, what kind of work your teams are doing, and also where you are located. The most evident example of this variation or location-based variations is if you're a multinational organization and try to work security culture or security in general or any kind of culture or basically any kind of task with a team with, for example, people in New York, maybe in Berlin, in Calcutta, in India, and maybe in Singapore or Tokyo or somewhere around the world. But you have teams in different locations. How they respond to your communication and how they communicate back to you, you know this already, so I don't need to say it. But for the rest of you, it differs. It really depends on that individual employee or that team's background and culture. So one example would be South Asian cultures are very much very different from European and US based culture or Western culture
Do you
in the
have
sense
some
that
examples of that?
yes. So,
Yeah.
so one of the examples is that in Southeast Asia, more often than not, you will have if you report to me, you will look to me for answers, even if they ask you directly what your opinion is, because you are not really allowed to have any other opinion than my opinion. Whereas in Norway, for example, you are not only allowed to, but you're also encouraged to have your own opinion and also to voice it if you disagree. I may not like it, but it's part of our culture to do that. And then in America, in the United States, they often believe that they have this kind of openness and flat hierarchy structure, whereas in comparison to Norwegian culture, it's very, very strict. But compared to an Asian culture, it's often very fluid and very flat. So the point I'm making is that culture differs where you are. It is possible to observe it and then adjust to it. And I will give you a reading tip here, all of you. One of my favorite authors, her name is Erin Myers, and she wrote a book, a best-selling book called The Culture Map. The Culture Map. I'll put it in the chat. This book, if you work with anyone outside your own country, read it. It will be an immense help. Even though it's not particular about security, it's about culture and how we are so immersed in it that we don't really realize how similar we are and how different we are.
Okay, and if I can ask you, Marte, I mean, Kai, you gave some great examples on how culture differs from country to country, and how pretty much everyone is different. But Marte, you work with a lot of Norwegian customers, right?
Yes.
And could you tell us a bit about how Norwegian culture in general is a part of influencing the culture in the organization, and maybe add a bit about how that can influence the security as well?
Yeah. So many great points from Kai. I would definitely say that it resonates with what we see in especially in the Norwegian culture, with being able to give feedback and actually be listened to in the organization. So that's why we try to use this. So we actually do ask people for their opinion on training, and we usually enable a survey at the end of the training program where the employees can evaluate and give feedback to whether or not that was a good learning, if they thought that something should be changed, because we see that that helps with actually making the security culture program better suited for the organization. Of course, we can't take everything into consideration because something has to be general, but we have gotten a lot of good input from users, and these are the people that are actually gonna change, so we need to know what makes them change. And another thing that we see in the Norwegian companies is that they often look to management not as someone who decides for them what they think, but someone who can lead by example and show them maybe what can be a good way to deal with security and security awareness.
Okay, and I'm going to use your last point about leading with example to kind of transition into our polls. We asked everybody if they've been asked by their board or CEO to implement a security awareness program, and I can see it's 57% no, 43% yes. So it's about 50-50, and then that's kind of what we experience as well, is that often companies can have struggles trying to engage the board or the CEO in cybersecurity awareness. And Martin, do you believe that it would help if they were more educated on the topic?
Yeah, definitely see that more education among the leadership on security awareness and security culture, it will definitely result in them being more open to providing resources and helping to collaborate on the topic. So it's definitely a big help if the management also understands the importance of security culture in the organization.
Okay, and
may I make a comment there, please?
Yeah, of course.
When it comes to information and knowledge for the management and the board, it is critical that this information is adjusted to their needs and their kind of world, their perspectives. We see a lot where organizations fail to make it personal to the leaders, in the sense that they, and they being then the security team now, fail to understand what the job of the leader is, and therefore they fail to adopt the message and the content to in such a way that it resonates and makes sense for the leaders. Why do I say that? Well, two reasons. Number one, if we fail to make it resonate with those we are communicating with, they will not do the actions and acts that we want them to do. And secondly, it is our responsibility, not theirs. It's our responsibility to make sure that they understand, which means that if it means that it's not about saying something or sending them a training and say, now you get it. And if they don't, oh, they are so stupid. Instead, it's about, okay, what is it they need from me in order for them to get the message? And then I have to do the heavy lifting. I have to do the work of adapting my message in such a way that it actually makes sense to them.
Yeah, that's a great answer, and it's a really good point you make, and I think that's kind of the point about security awareness training as well, is to help educate and motivate people to make smarter decisions and make more secure decisions in the future. And I think both of you could have a great answer to this next question, and that is what can we do to help the leaders, help the board, or help the CEOs and the CEOs realize the risk and about security awareness.
Well, I can reveal that a good tactic is always to scare them with some examples. That always seems to do the trick. But other than that, I would definitely support Kai's reasoning in that we need to make it, tailored for the management as well, because they have different responsibilities, they have different authorities than the other employees, and they actually have a burden on them to be an example, and we need to show them how they can be a good example without them having to make all the work. And we need to, the same as with all the other employees, we need to change their perspective on how they see security culture and how they can be an asset to the organization, and not just think that that's out of my wheelhouse. It's not my responsibility to do the security culture training, and because that will just put the organization at a risk, and it will definitely not help your employees see the importance of security culture.
So I will add a couple of comments there. Number one, I do not believe in scaremongery. Further, I don't think that research support scaremongery. What we see from research is that if you scare people, usually it's very, very effective short term, meaning that if I enter a room with a bat and tell you that do this or I'll hit you, or in InfoSec language, do this or ransomware or something like that, that tactic works there and then until you leave the office and do something else. Meaning until you are no longer on their mind, they will, go back to whatever. So when I say make it personal and make it relatable for them, I don't mean scaring them. What I do mean is make them understand the point and the threat, because the threat and the risk is real, but it's not about that bat. It's not about making it sound like it's not about scaring. It's about informing and making them realize that there is a risk that needs to be managed, but it's also for us, the security professionals, understanding that as a business leaders, their job is to manage risk. So our job is to inform them about the risk, and then their job is to make the right decision. Of course, sometimes you will disagree with whatever decision they come up with. Other times you will agree with it, and sometimes it's not enough. That differs. But use information, use workshop, discuss with them, monitor and communicate risk in a way that they understand. Try to avoid the bat. That's not what we are here to do. But that being said, everything else I think Marte has some very good points with. And for me, it's always down to make it personal to them. And there I lost my light, which means that I am now in the dark. Over to Marte.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. I just have to, sorry, I definitely agree with the bat metaphor, and I'm not saying we should use the scare tactic every time, but it's definitely a good way to get attention. And then we need to have like you said, the information and the research and the facts that we can support it with and get a foothold in the organization to make them understand the reality. So good points.
Yeah, I mean, Halloween's coming up, so it's kind of on theme, of course. Anyway, I can see we're starting to run short of time, and there's one subject I kind of want to bring up and make sure that we get enough time to talk about, because we talked a lot about the research, we talked about the numbers, cultures in different countries, and we talked about the board, how to engage the board, and we've seen your training cycle, but we still not talked about maybe the most important thing when working with security culture in your organization, and that's the end user. I mean, the main goal is, of course, to educate, to motivate, and inspire the users to want to achieve and want to learn about cybersecurity and want to make smarter and more secure decisions. So my question is, I guess to you, Marte, how do users typically take to this kind of training, and could you tell us a bit about the feedback that you get from some users?
Yeah, definitely. And we do, like I said, we do usually ask for the opinion of the user because we think it's a great resource in developing the program. Most of the time, we do see a positive response to sort of fun security awareness activities, like games and quizzes and everything, and that's a very great way to start off and by learning through doing something fun, and then we try and move on to more mature content, not mature content, but you know what I mean, for a more mature organization. And it's we try and adapt to the level of awareness and behavior that we do see in the organization, and try to match the level that the employees are on. Because if you keep giving them super short videos with one quiz, then that might get tiresome. Then you can change it up, and you can change up how you do the phishing tests, just vary the activities, and you can even go on to adding webinars like this, and you can have presentations and posters and postcards and whatever you'd like, to sort of try and vary so that they still think it's fun, but they also learn something. And it's important that they learn something from it, that it's not just fun.
Okay, so what you're kind of saying is that typically when you go into an organization, the maturity is like it's okay, and you start with like short videos, and then over time the users usually take pretty well to it and get more engaged, and you can start sending more heavy data, and the users still take to it.
It's a very fine balance between giving enough and giving too much to the user. It's important not to overwhelm the user or the employee with a lot of information all the time. That hasn't proven to be very effective. So it's a very fine balance that we have to sort of figure out as we go along with each organization. But we learn from each case, and we take it with us and try to improve the next one and the next one and the next year.
Okay, and if we, I took a quick look at the polls, and I can see there's actually quite a lot of people who have a continuous and ongoing security awareness program today, at 71% actually. And to use Kai's seatbelt metaphor from earlier, how do you kind of use the policies and the and what kind of carrot do you use to kind of drive the engagement, the motivation in the users? How'd you get them to? How'd you inspire them to learn more about cybersecurity? Did you have any tips for the people watching?
Well, so we've been through most of it, but I think, like Kai says, you need all of the factors. You need the policies in place. You need the follow-up from management and the actual policing of the policy. And then again, you don't want it to be too strict. You don't want to force them into doing it, because then security would just seem like a hindering in people's day, and it will definitely not change the culture for the better. So it's important to also try and help them along. You could give some achievements when they complete the security training program. You could have the security hero of the week, which some organizations like to do, and some organizations just like to threaten with disciplinary processes if it's not completed, if people don't complete the training program. Um, well, I think that's up to each organization and what's effective for them and what they usually do, but we would definitely recommend a kinder approach to inspire instead of threaten.
Yeah, so no bat to the head if you don't complete your training.
No bat to the head. Maybe some you get enough scares from pressing phishing links in emails, so you don't need additional scaring.
So one thing that we've been testing, and we is the Know Before Research and some of our customers is A and B testing. So the idea there is basically to learn from marketing and figure out what works best for us. Because whatever works best at one organization may or may not work best as at a different one. And this reasoning can also be seen internally. So what works best in one team may not work best in another team. So if you have the bandwidth, and of course, if not, reach out to Watchcom; they will help you. Consider setting up A and B testing. So different campaigns or different audiences depending on your needs.
Okay, perfect. I mean, we have just a couple of minutes left. I've asked in chat if anyone has any last minute questions to our speakers. If not, Marte, would you like to say some final words before we round up?
Sorry, I keep pressing the wrong button. So I would just like to say thank you so much to Kai for this discussion. I think it's been really fun, and I would encourage everyone to go out and learn more about Know Before and security culture. I think it's very, very important, and I think, like Kai says, there's a lot ahead of us. We have a lot still to discover and sort of work out, but it's a very, very exciting journey to be on to try and sort of navigate. So I think it's been really fun, and I hope we can continue this collaboration and these discussions, because I think it's really necessary for us to be able to collaborate on this.
Okay, and Kai, do you have some final words before driving off into the sunset?
Yeah, well, so I think it's important to remember that security culture or awareness or whatever you choose to call it is not the end. It's not something that exists by and for itself in your security program. Instead, it is one of many pieces that should be part of your security program. So treat it as a part of the whole, just like security is a part of the whole when it comes to your organization.
Okay, great words and great insights. I mean, thank you both for taking the time to come in here and have this talk and sharing your insights, your knowledge, and your information. I think it's been great, and of course, I hope we can do it again sometime. Maybe when you get your numbers and you publish your research, Kai.
I'll be very happy to be back here. It's been a great pleasure, and as always, see you next time.